I'm Horace Douty in Lexington, Virginia, and I am bringing you several chapters from my history book, which is entitled History Lessons from a Country Church. And I'm focusing on General Robert E. Lee, who came to Lexington and became president of Washington College, the campus of which I'm on right now. And behind me is the house that was built for Lee while he was president of Washington College. I hope that you will enjoy these videos, share them with your friends, click on subscribe and like, and on the little icon bell so that you'll be notified. And these books of mine are available if you're interested. They're stories of local heroes from Lexington, Virginia. And the books are available at Downtown Books in Lexington, also the Bookery in Lexington, and you can also order them on Amazon. Today, the title of the lesson is Robert E. Lee, What Should He Have Done? Those who hold Lee in high regard today are surely disturbed by the movement to remove his name from Washington and Lee University, because there is still a lot of disquiet about the fact that Lee owned slaves. What should he have done? This is not an easy question to answer. What would you have done had you been faced with Lee's dilemma in 1861? He was a soldier, that was his job. He strongly opposed Virginia's secession, but the state leaders took action to secede and be independent of federal authority, and Lee was suddenly forced to make an awful decision. He knew that war was coming. He only had two choices: either attack the state where his roots ran deep, or defend its position. After an inner debate that tortured his very soul, Lee finally declared, "I cannot, under any circumstances, lift my sword against my homeland, my native Virginia, and my family." Such a wrenching decision should never be labeled utter moral failure. Lee followed the voice of his conscience. He did what he perceived as his solemn duty. When George Washington elected to wage war against the British crown, whom he had been sworn to defend, was that moral failure? The king thought so. If America had been defeated, Washington would have been hung. Using the same logic, should a school be named after someone who has relinquished his military position? If we must remove the name of Lee, then why not also remove Washington? They both did the same thing. Where do we end the cleansing? Our nation's capital must be renamed, as well as a state and countless other namesakes, cities and institutions. Now, Lee's family had owned slaves, so had Washington, but Lee had freed all those who he had the power to free years before the Emancipation Declaration. Does that not count? In none of his writings do we find Lee supporting the cause of slavery. Nowhere. There are some people today who choose to think that the American Civil War began and ended over the single issue of slavery. My own ancestors living in northern Pennsylvania fought on the side of the Union, and I ask a reasonable question: would several 100,000 Southern men volunteer to give their lives in defense of slavery when only 3% of them owned slaves? Of course not. We can never dismiss the awful evils of slavery, but other vital issues were involved. The serious student of history must learn that all great moments and great movements are complicated. We must not judge too harshly the motivation of other people, whether the subject is war or religion or even the choice of a mate. Historians tell us that our war against England in the 1770s was never supported by more than 1/3 of the American people. And now we call it our Revolutionary War, through which we won our nation's independence. Hindsight portrays it as a noble cause, yet while the war was being waged, the majority of Americans opposed it. Robert E. Lee spoke of the Civil War in America as a tragedy. Few people today would disagree. Surely some alternative could have been worked out, but the war came. Sincere citizens on both sides gave all they had in support of their moral convictions. When the terrible war finally ended, one great man did more than any other to restore harmony and peace and loyalty to the government. His name is Robert E. Lee, the defeated Southern commander. The roots of Washington Lee University are here in Rockbridge County. General Lee helped it survive. The same Presbyterian leaders that graduated from this institute and established it are intertwined with our nation's history. Therefore, we do well to keep the banner of Robert E. Lee held up. There is no finer example of a Christian gentleman. Thank you. God bless you.